that there could be something else coming from it. And there are other 2 points. We're refreshing the community-led processes with some of our community groups and enhancing the continuum of substance use services available to Parksville residents, and even having some of the sharps disposal boxes at Island Health owned or leased properties. So those are just some of the things that came out of that letter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? There was a good write-up in today's newspaper as well on the discussion. They covered it. I was very, very pleased with how Island Health and the deputy ministers all came forward with a very open mind about what the situation was. And it wasn't just slam the door shut and say, no, we're not interested. They displayed a great deal of concern about wanting to go forward and have discussions and put together whatever is necessary. As Councillor Patterson has said, they are looking at putting together committees and organizations. They did make mention that they wanted 2 of our councillors to sit on the committees with them, and I haven't talked to them yet, but I will be talking to them, and if that's the case, then we'll just go forward with it. I couldn't be happier with everything that's gone on so far on this one. It's been very good.
Just a reminder to anyone who missed the meeting, it is on our stream. It was live streamed and
Yes.
public. So there were some folks in attendance in the audience, but anyone who missed it can watch it online.
Very, very good reminder. Thank you. All right. So take the vote on receiving. All those in favor of receiving? Unanimous. Thank you. The Grant and Aid Select Committee, the COVID Relief Grant and Aid second intake. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Councillor Chandler's moving it. Councillor Fraz is seconding. Discussion. All right, we'll go around the table. We'll start. Who is first? Councillor O'Brien, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to point out that after meeting with our group anyways, the committee members anyways, it was a pleasure anyways to read. This is regarding the COVID relief grant intakes anyways, of which the city of Parksville received a total of $280,000. This was the second intake to disperse those funds that this council approved unanimously to pass through to our community organizations that were hit extremely hard during this COVID pandemic. What was particularly enlightening to me was reading the background information from all of the associations that came forward and applied for it. Very worthy, and from their activities and their contribution to our community is immense. So I'm very proud that we can put through this second portion of the grant and aids, and I'm sure that it'll be much appreciated by the organizations that's received it. So just let it know that this is a great initiative, and I believe that it's going to be well received.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo so much of what Councillor O'Brien has said. This is the remainder of the COVID grant, relief grant. So unfortunately, we won't be able to give out these large requests or anything moving forward in the future. But I did want to point out that we also do have 2 intakes of our council grant and aid of $2,500 available in the spring and in the fall for smaller groups and everything that's still are requiring some grant and aid opportunities. So again, like Councillor O'Brien said, it was really touching and in some ways rewarding and everything to be able to advance the COVID relief grants to these organizations. And there's so many others in the community that do such great work in our community and didn't take part or didn't have any requests for the grants, and I mentioned that when we were deliberating between them all and whether or not we should take all of the COVID relief grants and use them at this time to the organizations, as this would be the last intake. But we decided that all of these organizations had asked for funds, and we had the funds that were available. So we chose to use all the COVID relief grant for this intake. So I'm really glad that we could contribute to these worthy organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Chandler and Councillor Frass.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of notes, and again, echoing both Councillor Patterson and O'Brien. I think it's just wonderful that we're able to do this for these associations and groups and nonprofits. I think one of the things that we always recognize, and I know the mayor is the first to jump in and say this a lot of times, as well as all of us, that without the availability of these volunteers for these associations wouldn't exist. I mean, it's really an incredible scenario when it comes to this city and this area. I think we're probably really blessed to have the kind of volunteerism we have here. So I just want to point that out. Thank you to all the volunteers to make this happen. And of course, you make giving these funds kind of special because of that, for what you do for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Frass.
Thank you to council here. Just wanted to also explain a little bit of the reasoning on some of these things, because I'm sure some people might have questions when they look over the different amounts that are handed out. It's not a reflection at all of the value or the appreciation of these different groups to determine which amount they get. In large case, it's these are the amounts that they put forward in their applications for the request. So particularly, you know, too, when I see ones like the Broom Busters being for such a small amount compared to relative to the other ones there, and that's their full request, what it was that came in for the application. So hopefully that answers any questions for people there. But also they also receive in kind help from the city other ways too. So if there's any questions about any of the amounts, you can feel free to reach out to us for explanation on them. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank the Councillor Patterson, Councillor O'Brien, and Councillor Frass for taking this challenge on and doing a great job. Appreciate it. And I echo everyone's thanks to all the volunteers in these organizations as well. So good job.
Okay, I too, a couple of things. My thunder's been stolen on it, because I was going to say the exact thing that Councillor Frass said, that the amounts definitely don't reflect the contribution to the community. It reflects what it was that they applied for, and we were very fortunate to be able to give away as much as we did on this. And I do think that it should be constantly reminded that it's the volunteers that make these organizations up, and we're proud of the volunteers in the city of Parksville and all the good that they do. So as we move forward, I would like to call the vote on this, unless there's somebody else who wants to say on this. Anything else? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. For consideration this afternoon is the issuance of a development permit at 240 Dogwood Street to facilitate the installation of a new pool and associated amenities and landscaping on the subject property. The recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Chandler and Councillor Wilson. Discussion? Anybody have anything? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Mr. Russell. I note that this swimming pool, this is being proposed anyways, is moving from the roadside over to the water side. And so I want to congratulate it's the Bayside, is it correct? The Bayside Resort anyways. Congratulate them for taking advantage of their world-class waterfront property, but putting the pool on the waterfront. It's going to be definitely a great addition to our resort community here anyways, and it will prove to be a big draw. So I applaud them for taking the initiative. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Okay. I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Russell, you're away on the second one, please.
If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration this afternoon is the issuance of a development permit to facilitate some amendments to the landscaping at 180 Jensen Avenue East. These are primarily to include some recreational facilities on the property, some games courts, etc., and as well as to change the exterior fencing as a result of the need to put in a retaining wall along the edge. The recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Counselor Wilson and somebody to second, Counselor O'Brien. Discussion? Is that a yes? You want to discuss?
Thanks, Your Worship. Looking at these drawings, it looks pretty nice for sure. So
It's on my side of the building. I like it. All right, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Mr. Russell, you're doing well so far.
If I may, Your Worship and Council, for consideration this afternoon is the issuance of a development permit at 440 Island Highway West and 463 Rowan Avenue. The purpose of this application is to reroute a drainage channel. Currently, the city discharges its storm drainage system across the property at 440 Island Highway West. This application proposes to relocate, to reroute the water channel, as well as ultimately facilitate a subdivision and the dedication of some park. This application has a history that goes back, I think, to about 2007, just off the top of my head. Anyways, this will facilitate that relocation, as well as the installation of a temporary sales office and parking area to ultimately, in the future, another development permit would come in for further development of the property with permanent buildings. But at this time, it's just the relocation that's proposed and the sales office, and the recommendations are per the agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations, Counselor Wilson and Counselor Chandler. I would say that this is like deja vu for me. That was back in 2008 or 2009 that we had this in front of us back then to move this water line around a bit. So Counselor Chandler, Counselor Patterson, then Counselor O'Brien.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question through the Director of Planning is, Blaine, would you be able to tell us how long is the time frame between this change that they're doing now and by the time they have to actually build on that property? Is there any restrictions there or just timing in general?
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor Chandler, the development permit is valid for 2 years. As long as they substantially commence the work, then it runs in perpetuity to allow them to complete it, as long as it's actively being worked upon. But that's just for what's within the content of the permit, this relocation work.
Counselor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. And you said it very much like I would have, that it looks very deja vu in some ways from the past, where nothing happened. I'll be blunt on that, because I've approved a great deal of development permits in the past that didn't go forward. So this is a substantial piece of property, and one that I've actively been, well, not actively, but wanting personally to see developed in the future. So if you could refresh some of my memory and everything for me, is this a different developer that put forward a development permit in the past?
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, it is the same developer all along.
Well, I wish them luck and hope to actually see some of their plans going forward, because they, in the past and even today, and that are very useful, and I would really love to see the landscape and everything and the water course and everything looked at and advanced. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor O'Brien and then Counselor Wilson. Sorry, I got distracted there for a second.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions through to Mr. Russell, if I may. At this time, Blaine, is this going to allow for daylighting of the entire water course through the project from Rowan Avenue right to the termination at the other end towards the Island Highway? Will the entire water course be daylighted, or does some of it have to go underground to facilitate the relocation?
If I may, Councillor O'Brien, so the more of the water channel will be daylighted than in its current form, as its trajectory is being increased, the length that it is running is being increased. There will be some capture towards the road end of the property that may be a little bit longer just to kind of intercept with it, but more of the water channel will be, significantly more of the water channel will be daylighted as a result of the proposed relocation.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I may. Thank you. And Mr. Russell, also regarding it's suggested by the proponent that it would be turned into a linear park alongside the water course type of thing. Is that going to be a linear park for the residents of the pending development going there, or is there going to be a linear park for all of the residents of Parksville?
If I may worship through to Councillor O'Brien, it will be a municipally owned park. It'll be dedicated at the time of subdivision.
Will it be able to be adjoined to Marks Park right beside it?
That is the intent. It will basically allow for pedestrian connectivity through Marks Nature Park to the highway, which should improve sort of use of the park, help sort of with SEPTED by having sort of more frequent use of the park, kind of taking away the sort of hidden nooks and crannies, if you will, in the park. So it'll be a more used park as a result.
Thank you for that. I know that when we had our Parks Committee and Councillor Fraz and I were actually went on a tour of that area, we were impressed with the amount of water that it was actually flowing from the Rowan Avenue, and we understand it comes all the way down from Springwood and so forth. It's stormwater redirected. And so we were very impressed with that. So for them to actually take advantage of that, we thought it would be a great addition to Marks Park, because there's nothing that kids like better than going to a park that has a water feature, even if it is stormwater, that's going through there. So I'm very impressed.
I think part of the history too, like as noted in the report, they originally had provincial approval to basically culvert the entire thing on the property. And so this is a more expensive option, but it's one that allows it to improve the water quality that discharges onto the beach by having that increase in daylighting, allows sun's natural UV rays to basically better treat the water before it goes onto our beautiful Parksville Bay.
That's really good news. Thanks, Ms. Russell.
Councillor Wilson and Councillor Fraz.
Thanks, Your Worship, and I think to our Director of Planning. Yeah, this is going to be a nice feature for sure. But I guess my question is, I went back through the last drawings that he presented as a concept. So why is he putting a presentation center, do you know, right now when he's not bringing those drawings forward? So I'm just wondering how that connects to what he's actually doing with this stream right now.
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, I believe the presentation office is, in my understanding, is to sort of help market those plans that aren't finalized yet. So at the time of rezoning, some sort of very early conceptual plans were shown. And I think this is an opportunity to kind of, I guess I would say, to drum up business for the future development of the site.
Councillor Fraz.
Thank you to council. I appreciate seeing this come forward here with this rerouting of the water course. As Councillor O'Brien mentioned, we had toured through there, and having this 2 access points off the park now, I think is going to add a lot of enjoyment and safety to the area too. I think we'll see that much better health for the entire park, as well as I think this is in line with the family who had donated this parkland in the past with their desires of seeing the improvements to the area. I think something like this is what they would be very pleased to see. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other comments? And I will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Carried. Mr. Russell, you're still up.
If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration is the issuance of a development permit at 119 Maple Crescent to facilitate a 2-lot subdivision. The reason for this development permit is the property is adjacent to fairly large forested property. And so wildfire protection purposes, it's in a development permit area that has guidelines to facilitate a safer development adjacent such forests. The recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Counselor Wilson, Counselor Chandler. Discussion. Counselor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Mr. Russell again. Regarding this, I walked by the site anyways the other day and noticed, I hadn't really noticed the fact that it is backing onto a rather substantial forest land. In perspective to this development, is that privately owned land up back there? Is it not city-owned park or anything like that? Is it, and what is the zoning on that development be adjacent to or behind 119 Maple Crescent?
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor O'Brien. The land to the north of the subject property, the large forested property, is privately held. It's currently zoned agricultural A1. I want to be clear that it's not in the agricultural land reserve, but it's sort of Parksville's equivalent of a rural zone where there's like 4-hectare minimum parcel sizes currently.
Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, carried. Now, do we have any motions, notices of motions from council? Oh, I see one coming. Thank you, Director Russell. Please, Counselor Chandler, you're recognized.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I was wondering if we could maybe potentially skip the process of the motion and ask for support on this today if possible. It's in regards to a mobile vending opportunity at the park. So I'll read it out here if I could. So to direct staff to create an RFP for mobile food service vending opportunities to allow for interested parties to submit with using up to 3 units for operating within the community park grounds between October 1, 2022 and through till April 30th, 2023, with 1-year renewal included over and above. Thank you. Just looking for support there from the rest of.
We're asking for, are you seconding? First off, we need an approval to bring it onto the agenda today. So I need a unanimous consent for this. All those in favor of moving it to the agenda? It's unanimous. Okay, now we'll talk to the motion if you wish. You've made the motion. Councillor Fraz is seconding it.
Thank you, Worship. Do I need to reread this again
No,
now?
you
or-
don't. I
No?
think we heard
Okay.
it the first time, but if you have comments you want to make, you're more than free.
I do. The only comment I'd like to make is I appreciate this being an opportunity for kind of showcasing some of the trucks during the quiet times of the year. I think it's great to have food or, essentially coffee services down at the park, pastries, things like that. We get quite a bit of traffic in the wintertime down there. So not to take away from what's going on up above, but the people that are coming down there, they're coming for morning coffee and they're wandering through and doing a walk and, bringing their pets through in the times when they can. So I think it's a good thing. And also the park is being used quite a bit, the playground and some of the odd days when weather's good and stuff. So I think it's just a nice little addition to allowing for extra services down there. So thank you for the support, everybody.
Councillor Fraz.
Thank you. And if I could add to it, I think for the benefit of staff too, if in this, putting this RFP together, if it could capture that it's, the off-season time and, perhaps accommodating for whether using the water and power or not using the water and power to have the rates reflective of that. But also that, recognizing the weather and the popularity of the beach in the wintertime can really vary quite a bit. So just capturing that and perhaps the price of the pad fees so that if an operator is to be operating down there, they're not stuck paying a rate that they feel like they can't withhold from being there for the day. That's just, reflecting of an off season and also a with use of power and no power type situation.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just my understanding to Mr. Councillor Chandler. Councillor Chandler, there's a motion here. Am I correct in assuming that this would just be another food truck concession that would dovetail with the existing Chamber of Commerce? The Chamber of Commerce runs. So from
May
your
1st.
times again were from May to October or October to May?
Just to clarify back through the chair to Councillor O'Brien. Essentially what we're looking to do here, because of the timing of putting the RFP out and the lag time in between, to try to get it done before the chamber actually takes possession of the pads on May 1st. It just won't allow for any kind of vending opportunities this year, as we've been made aware. So this would be essentially an additional service once the trucks pack up and go after their contracted period at September 30th of this year. They will also, in fact, be able to continue to stay. They would just be a part of the potential of jumping on board this same RFP if they wanted. And it would be outside of the chamber, we're suggesting, or potentially it may be within the chamber. It'll depend on what staff decides they want to do, how they want to write it, I guess. So
As a follow-up, if I may, to Councillor Chandler. So this would just be an RFP, a separate RFP for the off-season.
that's all we're trying to do here. We're just trying to put through the mayor to Councillor O'Brien. We're trying to essentially, I think, a request from a couple of different people that's come through in the past while. One today actually came through, which we're reacting to. And I think it's important just to be able to offer things down there. So it's going to be an addition to what we already offer for food services down in the park, which I guess is also really good because of opportunities for the construction folks to be able to eat down there too, as well, that are building the sound stage and some of the other things that are going on. So thank you.
Fair enough. I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you for your
Thank
info.
you. Anybody else? Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Your Worship. While I fully support the reasoning behind the food trucks and everything, I hesitate and everything due to the fact that we continue to add on to our staff, and an RFP isn't as simple as that. I think that they should go to the Chamber of Commerce to look after and be brought back forward to council, and for them to look after the scheduling and such of food trucks in the park. Because from what I understand, Councillor Chandler is looking for October 1st to October 30th, 3 pads. And we have several food trucks in the area. So it's not as simple as that, as managing and putting it out there. If it's an RFP for one food truck in that period and one food truck applies, but you could have multiple food trucks, and honestly, there are times where you would like to see more than one food truck in the park rather than just one. And we do have space for the 3. So I think it's not quite as simple as Councillor Chandler has put his motion forward. And I guess I could ask through the mayor to our CEO, and that what she feels the timeline and what this could look like for staff. Thank you.
Thanks, if I may, Your Worship. So we did advertise for this service before, and we did not get any applications. And I believe at that time, the chamber wasn't really interested in taking it on for whatever reason. That may or may not be the case anymore. So with a request for proposals, we usually put it out in a generic format and see what comes back. And so we would take that back to council with an assessment of what the implications would be. So if a group of folks came together and said they would coordinate, that would be ideal, I guess. But if it was just 1 or 2, then we would just basically have to kind of wait and see what came out of the request for proposal. We usually don't even put in fees or anything like that. We kind of put it out there and say, tell us what would work for you as operators. So I think, really, I would say little extra workload for us to just reissue the RFP because we already did it. So we could probably just reproduce that and then see what happens and bring it back to council with an analysis of and maybe some recommendations depending what responses we get.
That's Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So a little bit of follow-up. So we are not looking to have this in effect for the spring season. This would be something for the October 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding of the motion.
Just a couple of quick comments. If we go through this RFP process and we're taking all the time to do that, although we do have time until October, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, having been in the food business for more than a couple days, the operational expenses of somebody operating down there is going to be high enough. So if we start talking about, you're going to pay us so much a day to be down there, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. If they're going in there without using any of our facilities, any of our power or water or anything else, could we not just issue a maximum of 3 permits for the park? And if you show up that day, you show up that day. If you don't show up that day, nobody's there. I think it would just be a real simple process to let it flow naturally and see how it goes. Because if we put it out for a request for proposal and we start looking for all the bells and whistles on this request, I think we're just going to put it to bed in a very painful way. So I think that we should just have a special permit, maximum 3 per year, and whatever it costs. If we make it $100, $200, I don't know what the magic number is for that. That'll be up to staff to tell us. And that covers any of our incidental expenses that we may have on there. And as long as there's no problems, let's just keep it going that way. But with the opportunity to look at it at the end of next March when it comes up at the end and see if it makes sense. That would be my suggestion. Keep it simple. I've got Councillor Chandler. We'll let the CAO speak first.
Thank you, if I may, Your Worship. I was just going to suggest that we could certainly say that up to 3 trucks could be permitted. And then staff would have to work out, we do have to charge fair market value because it's assisted business legislation. But I think we can work out, what that would be if there's interest from more than one operator. And then I think if council's not fussy about like having somebody there every day or like really just leave that kind of laissez-faire, then I think that would be even easier. But I think the first step is perhaps just to issue the RFP and see if there is any interest, and then we can work out the details based on the responses that we get.
I was kind of hoping to eliminate, sorry, Councillor Chandler, I'll just to respond to the CAO. I was kind of hoping to eliminate the need for a request for proposal. I understand about the idea of assisted business. If we charge a flat fee of, we're not making it, I'm not saying, okay, he can come in, but she can't. It's who comes first, 3 people in, provide the service, they're willing to pay the permitting fee for the park and they get to use it in the park. And Bob's your uncle. And we go from there. I'm just trying to keep this as simple as we can rather than complicating it and creating, as Councillor Patterson actually put it very well, it's just another staff thing that we just don't need to be getting involved with. If we can, minimal amount of work would seem to me to be more than, or would be better than more work. But that's just my thought. Go ahead. And then we're going to let Councillor Chandler speak.
I just think we have to make sure that it's available to everybody, and we can't just pick 3 local folks. So we do have to advertise in some respect. So we've already drafted the RFP. It's already done. We did it. We've already advertised. So we could re-advertise. That's not really a lot of staff work. I think it's just then depending on whether we get 1 person or 9 people or no people, we can then assess the best way to make it as straightforward and simple as possible from there. But the challenge we have is just on the assisted business side and making sure that it's open and fair to everyone.
I'm not interpreting this as an assisted business. It's wide open. It's just like if I wanted to provide a permit to sell cigarettes in a particular store, then it's whoever comes for the application and the permit gets it. Anyways, Councillor Chandler, please.
Yeah, through your worship, just a quick comment too. I think, you know, it makes sense that it goes through the process. It has to, and, you know, as we say, it will slow it down to be able to put a truck in there this spring, but that's fine. I mean, as long as we look at this situation for the next years to come, I think is important. One of the things that, when I was involved in the Food Truck Association way back, we had a scenario where Nanaimo had come to us and asked us questions as food trucks as to what was going to be happening, you know, on the waterfront down in Nanaimo and what they expected they would do there. They came to us for some advice, and at that time, it was just kind of a collaboration of food trucks. And what they ended up doing was they charged a flat fee. They did a $600 fee, which was for the entire year, summer and winter. And so my suggestion would be something like a, you know, a nominal fee, $200, $250, something like that for the time we're speaking of, and go along that route. But I know that's some future conversations. So.
Okay. Councillor Fraz and Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. I really like the suggestion the mayor had about having it as permits, like having 3 open permits for the off-season type thing. And I understand about the needing to advertise for them. Perhaps what I might suggest then is after we start that process of advertising for it, if we can introduce it as 3 available permit spots, but leave no closing date to it. And maybe perhaps once the summer season starts, then it closes for that winter season. That way, right now, you know, we have people that want to be down there today or this weekend, but because the RFP date is already passed, if we maybe should have the deadline to the end of the season, so you can apply as long as the season's still happening. You know, this way I could maybe see it as being an improvement to where if people show up late or last minute type thing, they can still operate for the last day of the season if they felt there was a need there.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we should go along with the RFP exactly as presented by the CAO. Let's see the response we get, see what comes back in, and then we can have this discussion at that time. Councillor Chandler has a lot of good ideas of what it could look like, and maybe one of those proposals are going to come back and say exactly that. So the thing is that I think we should let it run its course. And the reason I wanted to go through the RFP process is because although the letter of inquiry that we received anyways did suggest that they were not going to need to use any hookups or supply of electricity or water. Perhaps another applicant that is looking at it would be looking for hookups and supply of water. So that's what has to be evaluated at that time too. And that's being fair to other people, knowing that we're looking for applicants where we hadn't been looking before or this last year. So I think the wisest thing is let's have this discussion when we see what comes back at us.
Councillor Chandler and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Through your worship, again, one quick comment. What I'd like to also suggest is that maybe we leave it open so that they're not actually necessarily working right on the pads all the time. There could be an opportunity where they put a truck down by the ballpark and, you know, a couple of different options too. I think there's lots of stuff going on all the time, and that would just open up a bit of a flexibility there. So thank you.
Let's leave that one open. If we're going to go to the RFP, if that's what everybody thinks that we should do, then let's leave that for the discussion at that point in time. Councillor Fraz, I bypassed you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our CAO Kaler has said that the RFP is ready to go. I guess my question would be how long it would be open for. I honestly think that the mayor's suggestion of special permit works really well. It could be applied for 2 weeks in advance for a specific weekend or what have you. I do like that it's an open long-term period as a shorter time frame with an RFP as businesses change hands and everything. So, or new businesses come to the community. So it allows for the flexibility of someone to apply. And so, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? My concern here is that we're making a mountain out of a molehill in the fact that we're talking about an off season. And I would tell you that over the winter time, I probably get more people commenting about the fact that they would have been really nice to have a truck down there for coffee when they were walking my wife, when she walks the dog, which she does every day down to the park, says, boy, it'd be nice to be able to get a hot chocolate or a coffee while we're down there. So I think there's a demand for it, but I don't think it's a huge money-making opportunity. This isn't something that people are going to make a living with. This is just a off-season type process. And I don't want to make it so cumbersome that it makes people go away and not want to be involved with it. I think the simpler we can make it, the easier it's going to be to attract the type of people we would like to have as coffee truck operators or food truck operators on this. So that was my purpose in making those comments. If we decide that you want to go to the RFP, I'm okay with it. I just want to keep it simple and less demand on the staff. So anyways, we have the motion on the floor as it is. It hasn't been amended, so we can go from there. If there's no other comments, we will make. I could. No, it's up to you. Well, you're right, but if the majority of people are interested in the RFPs, then I can live with that as well. But well, you can. Would you like to make the amendment? Councillor Patterson certainly is going to, and you're going to second it, I bet. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Although I'm not sure of the wording, and that, as I said, I'm more than happy and supportive of the other outside time frame and that, but I would prefer to see a special permit rather than an RFP. So I don't know if that's a friendly amendment. It seems like
No, it's
a
not
bit of
friendly.
that's a pretty far stretch. And so I think this motion needs to be defeated and another motion put forward. But if I could have clarification from our CAO, please.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what we mean by a special permit, because we have permits that we issue, or we have a license of occupation that we issue depending on the type of tenure, but we still have to advertise. So I guess I'm not understanding what the nuance is with the amendment.
Well, my vision of this would be that we put an ad in the paper saying the city of Parksville is open to accept applications for operating of food trucks on a sporadic basis. I don't use the exact words, but the sporadic basis from the months of October the 1st till March 31st or whatever the time frame, and to apply for a permit. Now, whether that doesn't mean they have to be there every day. That doesn't mean they have to be there. They just apply for it, and they're going to pay 150, 200, 250, whatever the fee is. They pay that fee, and that. Now, the alternative to this is somebody could make the motion. We could just refer the whole darn thing back to staff and let them come back to the next meeting.
The way I understand when you're talking about a permit though is just a little bit different than what you were saying there, as far as it being not so much an application where you pick through your application, but have it available for that. If you want to operate in the park, here's the fee for it.
Yeah.
It's not like an application where you can get turned down. If you're wanting to purchase that permit, we have 3 of them available. There's a rate with hookups, there's a rate without hookups, and then from there on, you can operate as you see fit. There's no scheduling be
We're
required.
saying the same thing.
Except aside from the application process where an application to me is you submit it and then we come through and pick it. I don't think council needs to go through afterwards and decide which one is worthy, which one's not. If it's the off season, I think right now, like you say, making a mountain molehill because there's not even enough demand to fill, we could fill one of them for part of the season, it seems like. So I think we just open it up. If you want to apply for the permit, here's the fee and then fly at her. In fact, right now, I think it could almost be a free for all and you're still not going to have enough people to fill up more than one spot.
Sorry for me, Your Worship. I guess I'm just really confused because we have reams and reams of requirements for the food trucks that are operating from May to September in
Yep.
terms of signage, garbage, recycling, collecting, materials, like it's never ending. And so now I guess I'm just confused. I'm hearing that we want to just put an ad in the paper and say, come to the city and get a permit for $100 and you can just be down there. Is that what I'm hearing? Like, we want
Not
to
all
do
that
that?
far away from
Okay.
that comment. That's my thinking anyways. Maybe not quite that simplistic, but to the point where it's easier to do. there's a huge difference of operating from May 1st to September 30th for financial wherewithal versus the other side of that conversation. So it makes a huge difference. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry here, folks. We have policies and procedures in place. And this is just like, we're just like working off the back of a pickup truck right now and deciding where the food truck's going to go for off-season just by doing a special permit. Someone mentioned already about the staff time, you know, that's going to have to go to do an RFP for the special, for a special RFP for the off-season. The CAO advises they already have a template in place. It's already ready to go and it already has all the legal implications. It's not just a matter of like, okay, well, you know, like, let's just create a brand new permit. You're talking about increasing staff time. That's going to be phenomenal. And who's going to run it? And the thing is that maybe the RFP will come back with someone that's going to run it. If it just comes back to a singular permit, then that means that the staff have to run it. And that is totally not a good situation. Our staff have clearly enough work to do every day without us adding to it. So I'm sorry, I think that this should go through the proper channels and get the proper advertising as an RFP does, because it has all the legal terminology that goes with it. So I'm certainly in favor of Councillor Chandler's original motion, but certainly not in favor of moving away from that.
Councillor Chandler, we're still on the original motion, by the way, so we.
Absolutely. Thank you through your mayor. And yeah, I do echo a couple of those things. I like the conversation. It's great. We've got an opportunity to look at different angles of it. There's no reason why I don't think we can't put all of this together in an RFP to make kind of a similar type scenario. So we put an RFP together and through that RFP, we sell 3 permits and then we're done. And basically the trucks can, you know, whoever's operating has to follow the various rules as the CAO has indicated. And yeah, we don't want to see garbage laying around. We don't want to, you know, have all kinds of issues down there. But I think that we're not going to see trucks from other areas coming in here. It's just not lucrative enough, but there's going to be some local people that'll want to get involved. I'm not suggesting that we may not see, I mean, we may see a truck from another area, but at the same token, being involved in the industry that I have been for years in the restaurant industry, they tend to stay closer to home during the odd season and when things are slower. So that's all I have to say. I'd love to see the initial motion go and then do some tweaking within it to add that permit fee, a flat fee straight up, not a daily, just do 1 fee and then they can operate within that period during that period of time.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I guess my concern is I don't like to not listen to staff. When our CAO thinks that there's an RFP, I always think there's a reason why we listen to staff's advice. So I also understand that perhaps can certain, and this perhaps through you to our CAO, can certain terms be put in that RFP that would answer some of the issues on the table right now, and then I might continue on with another question.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Wilson. Yeah, usually the RFPs, I can't remember off the top of my head what this one said before, but usually they're more generic. They're basically requests for proposals. So when you put out an idea and then it's up to the market to give you the solution. So you say, we want to have food trucks in the park in the off season. Send us your proposals. That's basically what you're asking for. And so I think it's absolutely doable to say council has indicated that a flat rate might work, but somebody might come back and say, well, I'd rather pay a daily rate, right? So like we usually try to keep it open so that people can offer what works for them. And then council assesses, we evaluate based on what we get. Council assesses the different proposals. And then we can negotiate and work with people as well, like to tweak things. And I'm sure nobody would be opposed to a more favorable rate, like if that's what council says. So usually we kind of leave it to the experts to submit what works for them, and then you work with that. That's the whole idea of a permit is usually the opposite, where it's prescriptive and it says, we're going to charge you this, you're going to pay this, you're going to operate from this hour to this hour. And that's the end result. So the request for proposals allows for a little bit more flexibility up front we decide then, do we issue them a permit or a license of occupation, or do they get a special event permit, which we already have? So it's kind of almost like, that's not the most important part, I think. The most important part is knowing what they want to provide.
Counselor Wilson, do you have another question? Then I want to make a comment. And then
No, I'll let you go ahead right now.
Thank you. This is the exact reason why we put this idea of notices of motion in place, so that we would come to a meeting prepared to have the conversation rather than spitballing around the table for a half an hour and coming up with virtually nothing. So it's not like we have a gun to our head at this point in time. This is going to be not until September, the end of September, before we even have to make a call on this. What I'd like to do is just ask staff to come up with a proposal, and then we can at least have that conversation and have an intelligent conversation based on what we're going to do, and we can go from there. If that would be my proposal on this. Councilor Fraz had his hand up.
I think I appreciate what you had to say there, and I think the reason why it did come forward immediately today is just because there's that call for it today as well. If we already have that RFP in place and the process was already there, and it's just a matter of the date being closed, can we not just simply reopen that, extend that ending date and be able to have applications come forward then, so that next council meeting we can vote on them using the same process that was already applied through that way they can capture perhaps the little bit of the remaining of this off season before the summer season starts off. Otherwise, it's like you say, it's pushing it to the fall. It's a next year thing when there's people right now that'd like to be operating there. That's I guess a question. Is it a possibility then to just open up the extending that closing date to the end of the season?
If I may, it's already closed. So we advertised and got no answer. So we have to do a new RFP. Our process normally is the 30-day period, just to give enough time for people who might be new, who might have a new food truck, who didn't respond the first time for whatever reason, so that they can prepare a proposal, but council can waive that if they wish.
I guess is it not possible to have it open? Like, do applications have to only be looked at the end, by the end of the end date, or as long as the period is open, if applications come in, can they be reviewed and accepted as they come in?
If I may, your worship, it's adding a lot of process. So every week, normally what we do is we get everyone to submit their proposals, council evaluates them all together, makes a decision, and then it's done for the year. And then we bring it back. Usually we try to put the renewal, as Councillor Chandler has put in, so that it's sort of a 2-year term, as long as the terms are the same. You don't want to have people coming and going every couple of weeks and switching it in and out. That's a lot more work for everybody, I think. So my recommendation would be that you have 2 seasons. You have a hot season and a cold season, and you have applicants with a timeline, so it's fair. And if you miss the one timeline, you know when the next timeline is. It's kind of just proper process in my opinion.
May I have one more?
Sure.
Is there any opportunity for us to be able to have something for the remainder of this season, recognizing that it might not be the ideal situation, but also that we don't have a surplus of people? I don't think we're not going to fill half the demand. Is there any way that we can have it to operate for the end of the season?
If I may, your worship, I don't know what you mean by the end of the season.
Well, until the summer season starts. We've already issued it for the chamber to operate
To May
in
1st.
May. Is there any way that we
Yeah.
could do is there any opportunity to allow food trucks to be down there before May this year?
If I may, your worship, council already advertised, didn't get anybody. So the proper process, I think I've already spoken to, but council can override staff if they wish.
All right, we've gone around this more than enough for what we have. We're on the original motion still at this point in time. Would you care to read it again for us so that we remember where we're at?
I would. Thank you, your worship. So the council would direct staff to create an RFP for the mobile food service vending opportunities to allow for interested parties to submit up to 3 unit spots. And that's to operate within the community park grounds between October 1, 2022 through April 30th, 2023, with a 1-year renewal included. Thank you.
We have a mover and a seconder on that motion. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of that question? Opposed? No. Carried. Leave it at that. Counselor Patterson, I'm afraid to ask. You have a motion, a notice of motion.
Thank you, Your Worship, and mine is considerably less debate, I think.
I thought that was going to go through real quick.
For many, so I'll give, can I give background or do you want the motion first?
Let's give us the motion.
I would like council in the city of Parksville to declare 2022 Year of the Garden with an endorsement for no mowing in May.
No mowing? No.
It's a term and that's kind of used for gardeners and such. You don't need to, it's two kind of parts, but basically I'm looking for an endorsement for a Year of the Garden and just maybe a little bit of history. They can go to agriculturists or whatever that for bees and different opportunities for growth and everything and using natural flowers and such in the community or in the Oceanside area, and that it's beneficial to not have mowing occurring prior to May so that bees and insects and such are able to.
To do what bees and insects.
Yeah,
do.
thank you. Procreate. The birds and the bees.
I wasn't going to put it in that sequence.
So, the no mowing in May is like I'm absolutely fine with not and just putting it forward as a Year of the Garden and please look at the naturalist or the we have a couple different organizations in our community that just support the Year of the Garden and
So you're making that your notice of motion for the next.
yes, I
meeting.
am.
When-
And
when-
notice
when the
of
mayor
motion.
When the mayor will be glad to adjudicate on that.
It is a notice of motion. So I can write it up a little bit better, but that's the history
fine.
and
That's fine, thank you.
that, so.
Counselor Chandler, you had your hand up again? I dare not ask. Okay,
I was going to comment on that, but now I realize it's a notice of motion. Thank you.
yeah, okay. All right, any other notice of motions, new business? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I think this falls under new business. Just two things I wanted to mention to council. This past Monday was Family Day on the 21st. The Parksville Museum, they hosted a happiness parade down at the museum grounds. It was a really cool event. I was able to go down there with my family. It's the first time they did this, but I think we'll be seeing it again. They had the Mount Aerosmith Pipe Band lead the parade. They met up at the chamber parking lot there. And it was encouraging for kids to get out on their bikes and their strollers or however they'd like to go out there and have some fun and celebrate and decorate. So the marching band led us down around the grounds. We did a couple laps of it to end the parade. And it was a lot of people are out there having a great time. Of course, the weather was beautiful this weekend. Yeah, they mentioned they're going to do it again. They had goodie bags out there and just such beautiful grounds at the Parksville Museum. I think it's one of the most beautiful spots we have in our community, and I love the work that they're doing. So I encourage everyone to get down there when they have a chance, and hopefully next year too to be participating in the parade. I was down there waving some balloons and having some fun, so it was a wonderful time. The other thing I was going to mention, I know a lot of people know today is Pink Shirt Day, and I can see that there's some good support out there as well. Of course, I'm dressed up in pink as well. I just wanted to just say a few words about Pink Shirt Day and why I am out here supporting it too. Today we recognize that our diversity is becoming more visible than ever as people continue to rightly embrace their cultures, their identities, and live their conscious. Pink Shirt Day is about having the greater acceptance of people and their personal choices. It's about having respect and inclusion instead of discrimination and division. And we all have a role to play in that. Bullying, it takes place in many forms, and it's not just happening in the schoolyard. It can happen at home amongst families. It can happen in workplaces, and it also happens out in our streets. It happens because of people, things we can't see, like people's sexual preference, or perhaps sometimes it happens because of things they do see, like their the clothes they wear. But also recently, in the past year, we've seen a rise of bullying, of vaccine bullying even happen. And all forms of bullying, discrimination, disrespect, and shaming is not okay. I think everyone can take a good look at ourselves of where we can improve, where we might have biases, and where we might justify our behaviors that allow room for bullying and divisiveness. We need to be the change that we can see in the world, stand up against unfair treatments when it happens, and find ways that we can lift each other up. It's for these reasons that I wear a pink shirt today, and I encourage everyone to find the ways that we can go around and, as I say, lift each other up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Press. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have some new business, but it's not about Pink Shirt Day. But that's a nice thought. Mine is that IAG Developments has their new Pacific Palms RV Resort has got a pub that's coming there. And they also have a restaurant at Pacific Shore. So I just thought it might be, everyone might like to know that there's going to be a new pub down there at the restaurant. There are a few other new dining spots in Qualicum and out in Fairwinds as well. But anyway, just for interesting.
Not near as important as the ones in Parksville.
That's right.
All right. All there? We're at the end. I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Chandler, Councillor O'Brien, all those in favor? Next meeting will be Councillor Chandler's chance to be mayor. Be patient with him. All right.